Hi, and welcome to ADAC Answers, an education podcast for all. I'm your host, Erin Black. ADAC specializes in providing to private school leaders and teachers customized professional development programs to assist their schools with meeting individual student learning needs and increasing overall student achievement. Led and staffed by passionate, committed professionals, ADAC prides itself on delivering to its clients and the students and families whom its clients serve precise solutions to their unique education challenges. ADAC stands for Accountability, Delivery, Access, and Community, 4 words we believe epitomize our work. We hope you enjoy today's episode and join us in listening to future episodes discussing all things education. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of ADAC Answers. Today we'll be talking about falling back in love with teaching, but before we begin, I will give you a little bit of background knowledge. Teacher burnout continues to plague education. According to a recent survey conducted by the National Education Association, 55% of teachers are considering leaving the profession earlier than they planned. Between 2021 and 2022, 600,000 teachers had already made the decision to leave the teaching profession completely. A nonprofit, nonpartisan organization called RAND Corp conducted surveys in January of 2022 with public school teachers, principals, and working adults. The survey asked about 5 aspects of well-being, which included frequent job-related stress, ability to cope with job-related issues, burnout, symptoms of depression, and resilience to stressful events. Nearly half of the teachers reported supporting students' academic learning was one of their main sources of job-related stress. Leaders indicated that staffing was a top source of stress for principals. 2/3 of the teachers that were interviewed for the report stated that taking on extra responsibilities during the pandemic, like covering classes or taking additional students into their own classroom, to be the highest area of stress, while leaders reported staffing shortages as their main cause of stress. So today we have 2 guest speakers that are going to be discussing teacher burnout and how to fall back in love with teaching. We have ADAC leadership team member, Dr. Sandra Drummey, and school leader, Krystie Medeiros, with us today. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being our guest speakers for today's episode. If y'all would take a moment and briefly introduce yourselves, then we can jump right into what we are seeing and how we can be proactive in addressing these issues and ultimately helping teachers find that love again for teaching.
As Erin said, my name is Sandy Drummey, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Leader and Teacher Development here at ADAC. And I'm thrilled to be here today to talk about this very important subject. And I welcome my colleague, Krystie Medeiros, to join us today. Krystie, would you like to say hello?
Mm-hmm. Hi, my name is Krystie Medeiros, and I have been teaching for 16 years and currently in a leadership role where this is happening all over our schools. That teacher burnout is very much a thing right now, and we have to look at it as teachers falling back in love with teaching and their why they're in the classroom. There's something that's keeping them in the classroom, so it's important to note that is a love for teaching.
Can you speak about teacher burnout and teachers leaving the profession? What are you seeing and why do you find it necessary for teachers to fall back in love with teaching?
Erin, I could speak to that. I think we all be seeing this both on social media, in the news, that, teachers are leaving the profession. And recently I read a statistic that 600,000 teachers have left the profession since 2020. And I think part of that may be due to the pandemic, and this may be a fallout of the pandemic. There is a lot of, stress-related issues that are caused. There's a reason behind this. Teachers are reporting that, we're finding a different set of students to teach. They're coming back with learning loss, so it's asking more of the teachers, unsupported in some respects in their professions. Some of them, there's a lot of low morale right now, and I think because there's been more asked of them than there was prior to the pandemic. I think for all these reasons, we're starting to see that teachers are deciding to leave the profession.
To touch upon what Sandy was saying about, there are more and more requests of teachers in the classroom. So they're losing prep periods to, where they would be planning, but now they have more meetings than ever, and they're losing preparation time that's valuable to teachers, and they're being asked to do more work at home and really not shutting off their classroom duties when the last bell rings, which is hard to adjust to and still give it your all in the classroom. Like Sandy was saying, the learning needs are changing every year. Students in front of us are all grade levels now, and to try to hit on your curriculum and meet the needs of all the students, not just the top performers, not your students who are struggling, and it's a lot more work. So, and it's just like a spiraling effect of the teachers have more duty, the admin has more duty, and it's coming together to say, okay, where do we need to be? And at the end, it's like, do I love this? Do I love what I'm doing? Do I love getting pulled in all different directions? And how long can you do that for? So that's where I think we're seeing some teachers, seasoned teachers, great teachers, throwing their hands up and saying, enough is enough. This isn't what I'm used to. 10 years ago, this wasn't what my classroom looked like, and just like we're asking students to adjust, it's hard to get some teachers to adjust, and it's easier to say, I'm done sometimes. So I think it's important to remember that these kids in front of us are individuals. They're not, yes, they're our class as a whole, but each child is a piece of that puzzle to make that class community. And when you get to know them individually, you'll get to know them as a student, and I think that is really important to come back to remembering on the hardest days that these kids are individuals too, right? And they all come to us with different learning styles, and they have to adjust to us even as teachers, right? So our behavior kids have a reason. We have a reason. And I think Sandy hit it when she was like, it always comes back to the why. Why did we sign up for this? There was a reason we all went to college and said, I want to be a teacher. It wasn't for summers off, because we all know that teachers don't have summers off, right? So it wasn't for all the myths that are out there about teaching, because teaching is a work of art and it's a special connection. And I think we have to come back to that and be reminded. Admin can remind their staff of that. And teachers, once you have that individual conversation about it, you always leave there and you're like, yeah, that's it. And I think Sandy has done that through her leadership role in her instructional coaching. I think it has turned into always ending her sessions with, what is your why? Why are you doing it? And I think teachers are coming back, and their feedback is that they do love this position, but they need this support. And I think it's important, as we finish out the school year, setting some goals for individuals in September, in the fall, keeping that in mind of their purpose.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I totally agree. You have to have a purpose or a sense of purpose to be a teacher. And like you guys have been saying, it is essential to get to know your students as individuals. Building those authentic relationships will remind you of your teaching why, and especially on those difficult days. Being able to make these connections with others can definitely remind you of your purpose as an educator. Thank you for that excellent tip. So as we reopen our hearts and find our passion for teaching again, what are some other helpful tips for teachers and leaders? What else can we focus on?
Well, thank you for asking that, Erin, because Krystie and I met and we talked about it. We had a nice conversation about this, and we were trying to think about, so what would be some good tips? If we were teachers right now, what would I want people saying to me? And I think Krystie and I both agree that, as you also said, Erin, it's so important to really get to know your students. Right? Not only as the learner, but what's going on in their home life? What are they bringing to you every day as a student, as a human being, as an individual, as Krystie says? Getting to know their needs, both academically, behaviorally, social, emotionally, is going to be so important.
As a leader, how do you help teachers facilitate this? How are you giving teachers the opportunity to intentionally build these authentic relationships with their students?
I think it's important, and it starts with building a strong classroom culture, and I think on day one, those kids, you set the tone for those kids, right? And if you have a strong classroom culture and strong classroom community, that will develop over time, and it will allow it to change when necessary. The kids change. I always say they're growing academically, but they're growing socially, they're growing emotionally, they're growing throughout the year. And we have to make adjustments, throughout the year. So, like Sandy was talking about, you know, um, again, knowing their home situation, knowing these kids go through so much at home. And then when we find out, it's almost mind blowing that this kid's sitting in front of us all day, holding it together, trying to do academics. But it's okay to have a mental breakdown. And how can we help them? The kids struggling at home, well, they're going to struggle academically because their mind and their focus. So again, I think that would come with having a strong, structured classroom, where if you start your day with a circle of tell us a little bit, somebody doesn't want to share, it's on a sticky note, please meet with me so I can tell you about this. When I was in the classroom, one of my tips, if we're talking about tips, was always giving the kids 10 minutes at the beginning of the day. Somebody came in and hit a home run last night at their Little League game, their first home run. They're going to want to tell everyone. And we can't start our day with quiet, get your journal out, get started. We got to let them share that because that's important to them, right? And we need to give them that open space to allow that to be something special to share because that is important, you know? Or if they have an art show or, and allowing that to be part of your classroom culture.
Krystie, I appreciate the fact that you're a school leader who recognizes the importance of building authentic relationships. It is important for the students to feel safe, seen, heard, and loved within our classrooms. And one way to achieve that is to intentionally build in time throughout the day to get to know each student on an individual basis. What would you recommend to other leaders who are looking to help foster a community that is based in growth, especially for educators?
I can probably share my own experiences being a school principal, and knowing, always wanting the staff to know that I was there to support them, right? But also, like you have both mentioned, fostering a culture of collaboration. We're in this together. We're a team, right? And we all know, you walk, faculty lounges can be almost toxic at times.
Yes.
They go in there, just an opportunity for them to come together. And I have to say, as a leader, sometimes purposely I would walk in and sit with them and just kind of trying to turn that conversation around and, try to make them thought partners in the process, trying to build on what are your talents and what can you offer. And I found out there were many talents among my staff beyond teaching, that they wanted to get involved in helping with the play or the concert, or they wanted to get involved with some of the fundraising activities. So, but it wasn't, we talk about getting to know our students, but I think as leaders, we also really get to know our teachers. And I'm not saying that they become your buddies and you go out and have, drinks or dinner with them. You don't always have to go that far, but just to let them know that you care about them too. Mm-hmm. And as a result, I always felt that you build that respect and trust. They come to work every day with a healthier attitude.
When I first started teaching, I was in love with it. I hated weekends because I didn't get to see the kids and I wanted to be there all the time. It brought me so much joy. And I remember my mentor giving me advice on a specific day saying, if you want to continue feeling this way about your career, then avoid the teacher's lounge at all costs. I wish I would have listened because I did end up going into the faculty lounge during planning periods to try to foster relationships with coworkers, but unfortunately it was a very highly negative experience. And we all know that negativity loves company and it can quickly make things spiral and create a sense of misery for individuals. So one way that I tried to get around the negativity in the building was to foster positive relationships with coworkers that didn't revolve around the students or the classroom or work. And in my experience, connecting with your colleagues allowed opportunities for growth and a happy, fun-loving work environment.
Right. I think you made a really important point that, surrounding yourself with positivity. positive faculty members and colleagues, because there's been a lot of negative in school. When we all went home during the pandemic and we were teaching from home, that was a big deal to everyone. Teachers were looked at in a different light, and look at these teachers going home to teach. And then we came back, and right away it just started with more behavior problems, more meetings, more demands on teachers, and it was quick to be negative about it. Like, my classroom's now never the same. Classrooms aren't the same, you know.
Right.
And there are a lot of negative talks, and some of the stuff is legit, but we need to spin that. And I think part of boosting morale would help teachers fall in love again with teaching, and looking at it as a positive light, and not getting involved in those negative conversations, and staying out of the faculty room might not always be the answer, right? But how can that be a positive space for teachers, and to enjoy a 30-minute lunch? What is that? But it could happen again, um, where that is where collaboration happens, where ideas happen, and, you know, it really making a big deal out of that. And again, I think, the focus needs to be on, for teachers, a boost in morale. Morale's low in a lot of buildings. It's not just one school, an isolated school. It's not because of poor leadership. I think leadership, they're in the same boat as teaching. Leadership's not the same anymore. The demands are more, and the paperwork is piling up. But if we can look at this in a positive light and coming together, like Sandy mentioned, finding the talents in the building, there's lots of talent. I always say the best PD is right next door sometimes, if we allow that to happen through collaboration.
I love the point you made about the teacher feedback or complaints. You are so right. Some of those teacher concerns are legitimate, and you don't want to ignore it. You want to make sure that you're hearing your teachers express their feelings and thoughts, recognizing some of their concerns have merit, and that you can take appropriate actions to solve the issue. As a leader, you want to be open to listening and avoid a black hole of negativity, or equally as bad, toxic positivity. Strong leaders will go a long way in boosting teacher morale within a school community, for sure.
I always have the image of the teachers walking out of the school at the end of the day with the big, canvas bag filled with, and, yes, I know that all needs to be done. And I know sometimes there isn't, but, I often think, like, I know assessment is important, and we need to assess, of course, and we understand that we need to know that our students are understanding what we're trying to teach them, right? But does it always need to be that, pencil to paper test that, you have to go home and correct the spelling test, the social studies test, can it be something different? And we talk so much about in our own work, right, when we're coaching teachers, about let's empower the students. What other ways can what other forms of assessment can we use so that it's not always those worksheets or those pencil to paper tests? Try to take some of that off your own plate, but make it, I have to just very quickly, I've been coaching this teacher this year, and mostly online, because she's out of state, and she's a new mother. And she kept saying to me, Sandy, I'm just finding it so hard when I go home at night, I have the baby and blah, blah, blah. And I'm exhausted. And I said, no, you need to stop, because when you come home at night, you need to be a mother, because that baby's only a baby for a short time. So we need to work with you to see, how do you stop at a certain time, whether it be 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then become a mother and a wife. Your family is too important for you. And slowly but surely, I got her to see the importance of that. And she was able to rearrange her schedule so that, okay, when the baby went to bed at night, she said, then I was able to, she's a third grade teacher, I was able to pull out and do some of my grading, or answer some of my emails. But then I said to her, okay, but you're not doing that till midnight. You're only going to do it for a short period of time. So, but think of your planning, think ahead, so you can plan your schedule. So, like I said, all of the pencil to paper tests may not be necessary.
Thank you for mentioning that. And you make a great point that, teachers have lives outside of the classroom, and they deserve to have that time. You have contractual hours, and it's not all possible to get done within those contractual hours. And we need to give ourselves some grace to understand that maybe I need to prioritize some other things, that this is not the most important thing right now. And I love that you brought up the fact of, being a wife, being a mother. And so I saw a lot of teachers that were in my boat, either being single or not having kids and taking on more responsibility. So it would take away responsibility from a partner teacher who does have a family. However, that is not a fair and balanced system, and it's not going to it's not sustainable in the long term, because every individual needs to have that work-life balance. And so, it's goes back to that piece of communicating with and collaborating with teachers to come up with different ideas, maybe different instructional methods, or, time management, things like that, just to get some innovative ideas from people that see you every day, know your workload, understand what you're going through. And be able to help you work through that process, because work-life balance is so important, and it can't just happen occasionally. It has to happen regularly.
It's important too that to know that it's not too late, no matter where you are in your career. I would say part of me falling in love with my job again over the last 2 years was I made a priority list every morning when I walked in, and I said, okay, these are my priorities, because it did take my daughter saying to me, Mom, are you going to miss my soccer game because you're going to be with other children?
Yeah.
And that stopped me in my tracks. And I said, okay, I need to restructure my day. I need to make her my priority and my children and my family my priority. But how can I get the most out of my workday? Okay, coming back to my prep time, was I efficient during that time? Was I off task? Was I communicating in the teachers lounge because I got wrapped up in a negative conversation that then took 20 minutes of my prep? So, making that priority list has really structured my day, that at 4 o'clock, I'm done. And no, my staff know they can reach out to me if it is a priority. And if not, it's going to be dealt with later in the week and when it makes a priority list, and as I was really sat down and said, how can I take control again? This got out of hand. I need to fall in love with my job again. I fell out of love because I was first one there and last one to leave. There was no reward for that, because at the end of the day, I got called out by my daughter, so that's not a reward. But I needed that. And now it's okay. I have a structured day of what I'm going to do. When somebody says, Mrs. Medeiros, do you have a second? No, I have minutes for you. And I want to make sure that I answer accordingly. And when I have time, and I don't rush you off, because I don't, a second to me is I can walk in the hallway and have a conversation with you. But if it's more than a walk in the hallway, then we need to put it in writing, and you'll make my list. And my staff have adapted to that, right? And now it's no more, do you have a second? It's, thank you for sitting with me. This really made a difference. But again, it came back to making a priority, taking control of my schedule, and structuring my day. So on Monday mornings, for a chunk of time, this is what I'm doing. And, and I really think teachers could take advantage of that, and think to yourself, am I using my prep period accordingly? Am I making the best of my time?
Definitely. And if you're not in the right headspace, or if you're just so burnt out, or you can't even think, don't sit there and force yourself to do it. If you need to use that prep time to have a conversation with an adult because you've been talking to 6-year-olds all day, then, go ahead and do that.
Exactly.
Because it's going to help you in the long run. And then you'll be able to get back to it at a different time when you can make that priority list. But as a leader, I really love and respect the fact that you value your employees' time. I think it's really important to have a leader that values time, recognizes time. And at the end of the day, we want teachers to do the best that they can and be the best version of themselves, because if they're not, those students aren't going to learn. Those students are going to suffer the consequences of instruction that may not be working or ineffective. They're not going to reach their highest potential because the teacher isn't in the right place. I know you guys had prepared something that you guys wanted to share at the end of our podcast, but before we do, I just wanted to see if you guys had any other final thoughts.
I think my final thought would be allow yourself to fall in love with teaching again.
No, I totally agree with Krystie. Like I said in the beginning, reflect upon why you got into this in the first place, for the love of children, the love of sharing your knowledge with them, and come back next year re-energized to focus on that, right? And bring joy to the classroom again.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We will end by sharing the starfish principle that you guys had prepared for us. So Sandy, if you'd like to take it away.
Thank you, Erin. Krystie and I wanted to share the starfish principle, and I'm sure many teachers who are listening and educators who are listening today probably have heard of this, but we keep thinking about, we do make a difference as teachers. We make a difference in the lives of children. And when I do professional development workshops, I always say to teachers, we are, as teachers, we have these students that are in our midst for a very short snippet of their journey in life, right? And there's nothing more rewarding. I know all educators on this call today know that there has been a student that's come back to you years later to say, thank you. You made a difference. So yes. That being said, I just wanted to share the starfish principle. Once upon a time, there was a wise man, much like Ellisy himself, who used to go to the ocean to do his writing. He had a habit of walking the beach before he began his work. One day he was walking along the shore. As he looked down the beach, he saw a human figure moving like a dancer. He smiled to himself to think of someone who would dance to the day, so he began to walk faster to catch up. As he got closer, he saw that it was a young man, and the young man wasn't dancing, but instead, he was reaching down to the shore, picking up something and very gently throwing it back into the ocean. As he got closer, he called out, "Good morning. What are you doing?" The young man paused, looked up, and replied, "Throwing starfish into the ocean." "I guess I should have asked, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean? The sun is up and the tide is going out, and if I don't throw them, they will die." "But young man, don't you realize that there are miles and miles of beach and starfish all along it? You can't possibly make a difference." The young man listened politely, then bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it into the sea, past the breaking waves. And he said, it made a difference for that one.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's beautiful.
You're welcome, Erin. Happy to do so.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being on our podcast today. This episode about falling back in love with teaching. Krystie, thank you so much. And thank you for your continued leadership. And
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yes. Thank you, Sandy, for taking the time out today to be on the show. And I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much.
To everyone at home, if you have any follow-up questions you would like to see addressed in a future episode, or if you want to share your thoughts on today's topic, then please submit them to us on social media using the hashtag ADAC Answers. That's right, ADAC and the word answers to let us know. If you would like to hear future ADAC Answers episodes, then please follow, like, and subscribe. And if you're interested in finding out more about our company and the services we offer, please visit us on our website at www.theadac.com. That is THEADAC.com. Thank you so much for listening to our episode today, and we look forward to you tuning in to our next episode. Again, thank you to all of our listeners from the ADAC team. We'll see you next time.